Today on Muddybeards 4x4, we're talking tools. Hey, it's Robbie here with Muddybeards 4x4. Today, I'm going to be doing a little bit different video. Today, I'm actually not going to be working on my rig. Instead, I'm going to be talking about these 6 most important tools I think every beginning fabricator must have. So let's get started. Okay, so I think the first most important tool, or I should say actually a group of tools this time, that you should have for any beginning fabricator is actually your basic safety equipment. When I first started building things myself, especially working with metal, something I really didn't think of much, and one time I actually got a piece of metal shaving stuck in my eye and I had to go to the ER to get it literally drilled out of my eye. And that's an experience I never want to have again. So ever since then, I've really made sure that I have just the basic safety stuff. It's affordable, it's easy to have, it's cheap insurance for you. So first thing is just some decent gloves. I actually like the gardening variety gloves because they're flexible, they're easy to move around in. The rubber fingers and the rubber palm make it really easy to grip stuff. Also can withstand some heat, so those are pretty nice, cheap. Get them at Harbor Freight or any Home Depot, something like that. And then I also have some big thicker gloves, big leather gloves for when I'm doing a lot of grinding or welding. These things really protect your hands from heat and from sparks and all kinds of stuff like that. As I said about my eyes, I was actually wearing just regular eye protection, just safety glasses when that happened. And so even though I like those, I've really kind of, just for the safety and never having that happen to my eye again, I went and invested in one of these. I think it was like $8 at Harbor Freight. It's a full face shield. It really protects your face from sparks and all kinds of debris when you are fabricating stuff. Not to mention, it also protects your beard from sparks, which is nice. So get yourself one of these things. I think it's an excellent, cheap thing to have to protect your face. And then lastly, I like to wear earmuffs. These are the same thing I use when I'm at the firing range, when I'm doing a lot of grinding. I like to use it to protect my ears. So these are the first things I would invest in, some basic safety stuff. It's cheap insurance to keep you safe when you start fabricating. All right, well, number 2, I think might seem really obvious, but ask anybody who's built anything or done any kind of fabricating and they will tell you that having good measuring equipment is super important for any project that you're going to start building. I don't have anything fancy, but I like a good tape measure. To me, I like a tape measure that has just the inch marks that actually go through the entire tape. I don't like to have one that has metric on one side and standard on the other because I like to be able to mark 2 sides of material if I need to. This one's cool because it's got big letters, and the inch mark again goes all the way through, so it's really easy to mark out things, really easy to see. This one goes down to a 1/16, which I really don't think as a beginning fabricator you'd ever need to go anywhere below that. I think a 1/16 is good enough. So get yourself a good measuring tape. Also, something like this is pretty affordable and simple measuring tool, which is just a simple angle finder. This one's magnetic, so you can actually stick it to a piece of metal. Maybe you're doing something with some tube or you want to build something that has a slight angle. This is going to be the tool that helps you find those angles that you want so you can make sure everything is perfect. Again, cheap, easy, the kind of stuff that you want when you're starting to fabricate. Okay, so for number 3 of the most important tools I think every beginning fabricator should have is this, a speed square, also known as a roofing square. So let's check this thing out. So more oftentimes than not when I'm using this tool, I'm just simply using it to actually draw straight lines. Because there's the lip here, it's super nice to just be able to put straight up against a flat edge or the flat edge of your material that you're using and mark it out. And so I know I'm going to have straight 90-degree, perfectly straight lines every time. Another really cool thing about this tool though is that this edge is 45 degrees. So I do the same thing, place it up against the lip, I can draw it out. I know I have myself a perfect 45-degree angle. What's really cool about this tool also is actually this little part right here, it even says pivot. And if you put this up against here, against your material at 90 degrees, all you got to do is push it down on the corner nice and tight and I can move it. And the numbers along the outside here are the actual degree in which the angle is off of 90. So if I push this thing here to 15 degrees and I draw it out, I know I have myself a 15-degree angle off 90. So again, a super simple tool that's awesome for beginning fabricators because I can make all kinds of different marks and measurements for cutting out material in many different ways, however I want. These things are super cool. There's actually a lot of YouTube videos already out there on all the different things you can do. I'm not even sure all the stuff you can do with them, because I know a lot of it has to do with actual roofing. But in my case, this is the kind of stuff I use it for, is marking out the lines and degrees and angles, just using the pivot tool and the 45 and the 90. Get yourself a roofing square. Okay, number 4, I think, is a good bench vise. You know, especially a beginning fabricator that's using a lot of hand tools, you know, angle grinders and sawzalls and stuff like that to cut their material. There's nothing more important than being able to have something heavy duty to clamp down on your material. You know, angle iron or pipe, sheet metal, it doesn't matter, this thing will do it. That way I have something that's nice and firm and steady, so I can make sure I'm going to make good cut lines and straight holes if I'm drilling. So this is something that you definitely need to have, is a good heavy duty bench vise. Okay, number 5 is a good hand drill and some drill bits. You know, I think every single project that I have done back there on my Jeep has involved drilling holes, and that's because a lot of stuff that we make, or that I make, involves, you know, something that's being bolted on, and so you got to be able to drill holes so that you can bolt something up. And so I just have this simple Milwaukee. It's a 12-volt hand drill. This is one of the best hand drills I've ever owned. I've actually owned a few of these things, and even though it might not be the most powerful, this thing is amazing. It's got a good chuck on it. It doesn't score up the drill bits or anything like that, and something like this is affordable. It's super important for anybody who's going to start fabricating. As far as the drill bits, I don't have a super fancy kit. I want to say this thing was like 25 bucks, and you can see I'm missing some. That's because I've broken them. So they're not the best, but you know what? I think for the price, I can go and replace this, spend another 25 bucks. I have some more drills. It's not that big a deal. As long as you are using a pilot hole and slowly stepping up, you can drill pretty big holes this way accurately. I've done it. I've drilled holes up to, you know, over an inch in diameter, and they've always turned out true as long as you take your time and you step up. Another thing I've discovered recently are these step bits. Again, I bought these at Harbor Freight, cheap, simple, and easy. And these things, again, as long as you have a good little pilot hole, these things actually, you can step up the size all in ones. You don't have to keep swapping out the drill bits. And again, I got these at Harbor Freight, and they just cut and cut and cut. So again, super important. If you're going to start fabricating, get yourself a good hand drill and some drill bits, and you can start building anything you want. All right. Now, number 6, and probably the most important and most versatile tool you can own if you're going to start fabricating, this might have been like the first thing I really invested in, is a good 4.5-inch angle grinder. Now, mine is a Milwaukee. I've owned it for about 4 years, and I've done a ton of projects with this thing, and it just keeps going and going and going. I would recommend the Milwaukee 4.5-inch angle grinder. But as far as fabricating, I use this for everything. Every project I've done, this is the main tool. This is the thing that allows me to make stuff in my garage without having to spend a lot of money, without a whole bunch of fancy tools. This thing can do it all. You know, it's got the cutoff disc, 4.5-inch cutoff disc, that you can cut any material you want. You know, I've done stuff, D-ring shackles on my rear bumper that were over an inch, you know, of material, inch steel, and you know, it takes a long time and a steady hand, but you can cut it, and you can cut it true with this thing, and it'll do it. Another thing I like is the grinding wheels. I usually use these if I'm doing something where you're like grinding a bracket off of an axle housing or something that requires a lot of material to be removed. Get yourself one of these grinding discs. Flap discs. These things are super amazing. I love flap discs. But because they're expensive, I like to use these more of like a finishing work when I want to smooth something out. You go over a piece of metal that you've done some welding on and you're trying to make it look nice. Go over with this and you can really smooth out those edges and make everything like nice and clean and even with the flap disc. You know, another thing that's really nice about this is some of the other attachments, like a wire wheel. I can put a wire wheel attachment on this, and I've used this to remove, you know, like undercoating, and I can get it into like little angles and get rid of, you know, seam sealer and stuff like that on some projects where you got to do, you know, some cutting and some grinding, and you got to take away some of that paint or undercoating or whatever. Even wire wheels are important. So, I mean, a 4.5-inch angle grinder is pretty much, I would say, the most important out of all this stuff. However, all of these tools are really, really important. You know, if you want to start building stuff in your garage, get yourself one of these, because this thing is a game changer. 4.5-inch angle grinder is a must have for anybody who's a beginning fabricator, and really, I think I know a lot of people who have a lot of fancy tools and a lot of nice stuff from the garage, and still, what do they use? A lot of times they're using one of these. Get yourself one. Now, lastly, I'm going to do sort of a bonus tool here, maybe call this number 7, and that is a welder. So I didn't include this in my initial list because, you know, as a beginning fabricator, this might not be something that you have the money or the skill to be able to use and operate or even get one. So, you know, the first few projects I actually did, you know, I just used those basic tools I mentioned before. I would do a lot of the cutting and drilling and grinding and fitting and measuring and stuff, and then I would take it to a buddy's house and have them weld it up for me. So it is possible, but if you're truly going to start projects in your own garage and really get some stuff done, you know, you got to get yourself a welder. So this is what I have. This is a Hobart 190. It is a 220 volt machine, so you will need to wire one of those up in your garage. This is actually a fairly affordable and easy to use machine. It is a MIG welding machine, and I do have it set up with a bottle. And honestly, I think this is probably like the easiest welding that you can do. You know, this is, I hate to say that it's point and shoot because it's not. There's definitely a lot of learning to do when using one of these, and I certainly have a lot to learn as well. But as far as out of the box and being able to start, you know, sticking metal together, this thing is awesome. And you want yourself a MIG machine, you know, wired up with some gas. I think that is the easiest way to start welding, and you know, you just got to practice, and that's what it is. And this machine right here, I believe, is about 700 bucks. You can buy it online for, which is actually pretty darn affordable for what it is. I mean, this thing will weld, you know, easily 1/2 inch when it's turned up to full tilt boogie, and I use it for a lot of different projects. It's super smooth. It welds really, really nice. And then the bottle setup, you know, that depends. I actually had a small bottle, and so upgrading this didn't cost me much to get all that hooked up. But I definitely think that I probably have, you know, under $1,000 into getting this machine set up and ready to go, including, you know, buying a mask and wire and those sorts of things. So this is something that, you know, as a beginning fabricator, this is a good machine. And get yourself a MIG machine and a 4.5 inch angle grinder and some safety equipment and some drill bits, and I think you'll be unstoppable. Thank you guys for watching Muddy Beards 4x4. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and let me know down in the comments. I'd actually really like to know what you think is the top 5 or top 6 beginning tools that all fabricators need. So let me know down in the comments. I'd like to see your list as well. If you guys really like the channel, I think you should hit that subscribe button down below and go check out some of our other videos. If you want to see some of the stuff that I've built using these things, you got to check out some of our playlists. I've done quite a bit of stuff back here on that Jeep. Bumpers and rock sliders and tube fenders, kind of one of my more recent projects. So go check those out. Hit the subscribe button, and as always, we'll see you on the trail.